Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. My name is Rajat Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Along with me, I have Payal Tandon, who's the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's going to be your main host today. Supporting us in this webinar, we have Shraddha Shaw, who's a subject matter expert at e-GMAT, and Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert. There's a strong belief in the industry today that to ace GMAT RC, you need to be a voracious reader. In this webinar, Payal will discuss how, by following certain simple reading strategies, you can improve your comprehension. And once you improve your comprehension, how acing GMAT reading comprehension probably becomes the easiest of all sections on the GMAT. This is a free webinar. It's very heavily attended, and to make sure that we're able to modulate this webinar to your needs, we ask a few leading questions. One of them is when do you plan to take the GMAT? The second one is essentially what's your target GMAT score? Okay, let's analyze the data for both these questions. For the first question, when do you plan to take the GMAT? What I really see is that the biggest segment over here is those who have more than 60 days. That's close to 50% of you. Then we have two almost similarly sized segments, and then the groups 46 to 60 and 31 to 45. And then we have a few folks who have their exam right away. That's wonderful. Let me hide this. And then with regards to the target GMAT score, what we really have is the biggest segment over here is those plan to score a 730 to 750, and then we have a significant number of people in the 710, 720 and 760 or higher bracket, and almost about 10%, actually 9% of the folks are in that 600 to 700. I have a target score of between 600 and 700. Now, this is a fairly application focused webinar, and to make sure that you know the few concepts that you need to know. We did send a few video lessons your way. The video lessons on main point were the most important. If you've not gone through these video lessons, I would recommend that you go through them. These video lessons are part of your free trial. So if you just log into your e-GMAT account, you should be able to get to them. Also, we have some upcoming free webinars as well. We have a free quant workshop, which is a proctored mock test that gives way more insights than you'd get from an actual mock test. Think of it as insights which would be even beyond what you'd get from an enhanced score report. So this quant workshop is tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific, and then we have a free webinar on how to pre-think assumptions, and that is next Saturday, a week from now, again at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Both of these very popular webinars. The pre-thinking webinar lays the foundation for every argument-based question in critical reasoning. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. The screen will be in the process of changing for you. I'm going to give the system another 30-odd seconds so that it settles down for everyone who's attending this webinar. You get in a poll question. Select yes if you can really see GMAT reading comprehension with the agenda and the presenter. All right, it seems the screen has settled down for pretty much everyone. If a few folks still can't see the presentation, I just recommend that you guys join again. Usually, if you're on a slightly slower connection, these transitions can be a bit troublesome. If you join again, the problem will sort out by itself. Behind this, let's move forward. There's essentially three parts of this webinar. In the first part, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to e-GMAT. That's going to be about 15 minutes. Then Payal is going to take over. We're going to go into the core of this webinar, which is how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. And then towards the end, if there are questions that we haven't been able to answer during the webinar, we'll keep an open-ended Q&A. We'll keep 20 minutes for an open-ended Q&A overall. Typically, to make sure that we get through this webinar on time, we recommend that while we are in the second part or the first part of the webinar, you reserve your questions to be put into the topics that have been talked about. Once you get to this third part, which is the open-ended Q&A, you can pretty much ask any question, whether it's about your GMAT preparation or your MBA admissions or anything else or so. All right, with that, let's start the first part of the webinar, which is an introduction to e-GMAT. Now, earlier I asked what's your target GMAT score, and about 66% of you said you plan to get to a score of 730 or higher. Now, while 66% of you want to get to that score, statistically, only 6% of the people get to that score, and this is despite the fact that schools have been demanding higher GMAT scores, and you can see some of these stats. These are the last time schools released that in fall of 2018. Now, what is it people who get to that 720 or higher score do? A good percentage of them use e-GMAT. Why do we say that? When you look at the number of verified reviews on leading forums or the number of success stories on GMAT Club, you're going to actually reach to a very similar conclusion. e-GMAT has garnered more verified reviews over the last 3 years than most of the other test prep companies combined have, and similarly, when you look at the number of success stories, the stats fairly similar. Now, what makes our students more successful than students from other prep companies? If there's one thing that sets us apart, is how we approach your GMAT preparation and the architecture of learning that we provide. So what are the various architectures of learning that exist today in the industry? When you look at the architectures of learning that exist today, you're going to find that there are two dominant architectures overall. One is the book-based architecture, and the second is the private tutoring-based architecture. Well, there are many courses that offer audiovisual instruction today. A majority of them are based around this book-based architecture. And when you evaluate the offerings from e-GMAT around these architectures, what you're going to find is that we are based more around this private tutoring-based architecture. So let's see why is it that students who follow one architecture versus the other are more successful, and why do we say that e-GMAT is based around this private tutoring-based architecture, whereas these other courses are based around this book-based approach. So let's take an example of how do you get to a score of 720 or higher. So an efficient way to getting to that score is to first create a path towards that goal, and everyone has a unique path to getting to their target score. Then you need to learn the content that you need to learn. Not just learning the concepts isn't enough. You also need to learn how to apply those concepts, and then while learning how to apply, you need to get so good at applying those concepts that you are among that top 6 percentile or top 2 percentile or top 1 percentile of students. So let's see how a book-based approach addresses this path. Starting with study plans. Okay. Now, a book-based approach is all about autonomy. So when you start learning from a book gives you 1 or 2 study plans, and you have to decide which study plan you choose. Then you learn concepts. Now, there are a number of books that will teach you concepts, and they're really good sources of learning concepts. Unfortunately, one thing that books don't do is they don't give you feedback on how well you've learned that concept. So that burden of validation remains on the student. One area where the book-based architecture does not do very well is when teaching you application of concepts. Why? Because the very static nature of books is not very well suited to telling you when you're approaching a problem, what do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2, what do you do in step 3, or is not very well suited to pointing out that when you made a mistake, where did you make a mistake, why did you make a mistake. So as a result, people who follow the book-based approach, they end up solving hundreds and hundreds of questions. And yes, a few do master application, but they're far and fewer than the other approach. And when it comes to evaluation of mastery, people who follow the book-based approach take a number of mock tests, and essentially students who are able to evaluate whether a mock test conclusively are able to make good decisions, whereas those who are unable to do so actually follow a zigzag path when it comes to their score towards a 720, where they'll go from one subsection such as reading comprehension to critical reasoning, then study sentence collection, then maybe come back to reading comprehension, then go to number properties, and so on and so forth. Now, private tutoring based architecture works slightly differently. When you work with a good private tutor would evaluate your strengths and weaknesses and create a personalized journey towards towards your 720 or higher score. He'll also allocate the amount of time that you need to spend at each in various components. Then a private tutor would start teaching you concepts, and as a private tutor teaches you concepts, you get specific feedback on how well you're learning those concepts. After you've learned a bunch of concepts, a private tutor would teach you how to apply those concepts, and he will tell you how you apply a concept. What do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2 and step 3, and again, as you make mistakes, the private tutor would give you feedback on the areas where you're making mistakes so that you improve. And as you solve more and more questions, a private tutor constantly evaluates your extent of mastery, and then when he feels that you are in that top 5, top 6 percentile of students, he or she would then ask you to move on from one topic to the other. So what's the difference between these two approaches? While you learn the same content, the extent of personalization, the extent of feedback is a lot more in a private tutoring based approach, and it's very easy to see why that approach is more successful than a book based approach for a majority of students. So let's see, why do we say that most of these other courses are built around this book based architecture, whereas e-GMAT is built around this private tutoring based approach. We're going to take a very similar example. We're going to take an example of a student who wants to go from a 600 to a 720 score. Now, the first step, you've got to create a personalized study plan. At e-GMAT, we built an AI-driven utility called GMAT Planner that empowers everyone to create their personalized study plan. The best thing, if you were to create a personalized study plan with a private tutor, it might take an hour to an hour and a half. This utility allows everyone to create one in 7 minutes or less. So, how does the utility work? The first thing that it does is it first understands where you currently are. And in this case, let's say this person is at a Q44 and a V28. Now, because this utility understands GMAT scores, so even though the student is at a 50th percentile in both quant and verbal, the utility understands that a Q44 ability means that the student knows a lot more in quant than what a V28 V28 student in verbal would know. So the utility first extends the student's quant score and then improves his verbal score so that the student reaches a 720 score. Now, if you were to get to a 750, the utility would work in a very similar fashion as well. So you first have a target quant and a target verbal score. But no one studies quant or verbal. People study number properties, people study sentence correction, people study reading comprehension. So then it breaks down and says, how can you get to a Q50 and how can you get to a V38? So it creates these personalized milestones based on your starting abilities in arithmetic, algebra, critical reasoning, sentence correction, and so on and so forth. So when this happens, your journey towards 720 is not a black box. It's a set of 5 neatly defined milestones, where in quant you go from these starting scores on the left to these ending scores on the right, and in verbal you go from the corresponding scores on the left to the ones on the right. If you hit those milestones, you can be very certain that you'll be able to get to that 720 score. Then you have to figure out the sequence in which you study and how much time you spend. This utility, based on your starting scores and the amount of time you can put on a weekday or as well as on a weekend, helps you define that. So in this case, this particular student started studying on 3rd of March, and based on the commitment that this particular student is making, this student can take the GMAT by the 9th of May, which apparently is coming fairly soon. You can really see how much time the student needs to spend on each of these subsections, depending on the starting score over here and the ending milestone over here. So when this happens, your GMAT preparation is no longer a black box in which you're studying. It becomes a set of 5 neatly defined milestones. If you hit those milestones, you get to that 720 score. Further along, this utility also provides a calendar view where you can decide how many hours you're going to put in every day, and then based on the number of hours you put in every day, this utility can then modify when you can take the GMAT. You can see where it takes in the input with regards to the number of hours you put in every day. And then the beauty of this is, let's say you were busy a particular week and you can only put in 3 hours. This utility allows you to do that and change that in the calendar view. Now, why did we spend 1,000 hours building this utility? So that each one of you can create your personalized study plan in 7 minutes or fewer. So let's see how you execute on this plan. So this was just creating a study plan. Then let's see, why do we say that when it comes to the next steps as well, e-GMAT's built around a private tutoring based approach. Again, we're going to focus on the guy who's a quant-driven study plan overall, and we're going to focus more on the verbal aspect. How do you get to a V38? So after creating a personalized study plan, a private tutor teaches you concepts, and then he gives you feedback on how well you've learned these concepts. We built a technology architecture that is empowered to do the same. Here's an example of a subject verb module in the paid portion of our sentence correction course. What you see over here is that you have these video lessons that are built-in quizzes. So when you learn the concepts, you get feedback on how well you've learned these concepts. They're very similar to what a private tutor would do. Now compare this to another very popular course by Magoosh, and what you find is, again, the same subject, verb, and related modules. First of all, it's not as comprehensive. Second, there is no feedback. In fact, even the time over here is the time of the video, not the amount of time that you spend learning these lessons. Once you've learned concepts, a private tutor teaches you how to apply those concepts, and to do that, we've created a very specific entity called an application file. In this file, we tell you, when approaching a subject verb question, what do you do in each step. Then we have a set of practice questions over here, and then we give you a carefully chosen set of official guide questions. If you do well in the practice quizzes and the official guide quizzes, you can be very certain that you know how to do subject verb. Now, we've done this in every module, whether it's modifiers, whether it's parallelism, and depending on the length of the module, the extent of its of how much it's tested, you have one or more application files. For example, in modifiers, you have 3 application files and 5 practice files. In parallelism, you have 3 application files as well. In comparisons, you have 2 application files, and so on and so forth. So the depth of learning, the extent of feedback also changes by how the complexity of concept and how much that particular concept is tested. And this is how every module in the e-GMAT course is architected. Now let's compare this again to the Magoosh course, and what you're going to find is there is no application file. There's just one quiz which is common not just to subject verb but also to auxiliary verbs, to pronouns overall. And then you don't see a score over here. Why? Because the intent is not to give you feedback, but just to give you practice. Now the last part is, you've been studying sentence correction for some time. How do you define, or how do you evaluate whether you've actually reached that 90th percentile or not? And then the reason why this is important is because you're studying sentence correction to hit that percentile, not just to learn sentence correction. To do that, we've built a tool called Scholaranium, which empowers each one of you to just figure out what your SC percentile is. Just take an SC ability quiz, and it'll tell you what your percentile is. And not only that, it'll tell you, if you've not reached your target score, where should you work to reach your target score. Over here, it's very clear. This student needs to focus on comparison. So you can really go back to the comparison module, revise that, take a few more questions as custom quizzes and comparisons, and then take another ability quiz and see how well you've improved. So again, you can really see why a private tutor approach is a lot more successful in helping you get to that 720, 740, 750 score. And why do we say that e-GMAT's architected around this private tutoring based approach, whereas most of these other courses are built around this book based approach. Now, who's created this content and who's defined this technology? Some of GMAT Club's top rated instructors have done that. instructors who've been reviewed a lot more frequently on GMAT Club. So while only 6% of the people get to that 720 or higher score, a good percentage of them use e-GMAT. We'll be starting our next batch of verbal and quant next Saturday, starting with pre-thinking over here. This is what a typical verbal batch looks like. We start with your critical reasoning or sentence correction. We do CR for 2 weeks, and we do SC for 2 weeks, and then we do reading comprehension and end with a proctored mock test. This is designed for working professionals. So every session takes place on a Saturday or a Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific. Now, live courses come with an unmatched score improvement guarantee. With verbal, we offer a 4-point score improvement guarantee. Let's say you have a V30, we guarantee a V34. Even when you have a starting score of V37, we guarantee a V41, which is 93rd percentile. There's no other course in the world that offers such a guarantee. Similarly, on the quant side, we start with algebra, then we move on to geometry, then we do PNC probability, then number properties, and then word problems. Like the verbal offering, the quant offering comes with a plus 3-point score improvement guarantee. If you have a Q47, we guarantee a Q50. If you have a Q41, we guarantee a Q44. And again, this is a pure guarantee, which means, if you have a score, you take our course, you don't improve, we refund your money. We don't expect you to take the test multiple times before we refund your money. With that, I've come to the end of my introduction. If you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, if you want to connect with students at top B schools, connect with me on my LinkedIn. I have upwards of 11,000 students connected with me. We also share about 4 to 5 articles every week. So everything that's going on in the B school world is something that you can learn from this channel as well. With that, I'd like to invite Payal to start the second part of this webinar, which is how do you ace GMAT reading comprehension. Payal, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. Let me just make sure that all of you can hear me clearly. Can you please press yes if you can hear me clearly? All right, sounds good. So hello and welcome, everyone. And let's get started with the second portion here. Reading comprehension. How can you ace reading comprehension? And before I go into the answer to that question, I'd like to understand what is it that bothers you regarding reading comprehension today? So tell me, when you think about reading comprehension today, when you think about your study plan and tomorrow, let's say you need to start preparing for reading comprehension, what bogs you down? Let's get some more responses here. I have about 13, 16 very interesting responses. Let's start reading through them. I think I won't be able to finish reading the passage on time. It's the focus, it's lack of focus during reading, especially in a stressful environment. Time required to read the passage. Completing RC passage, okay, too long. So it appears that a number of you are concerned about the whole timing aspect of it. Now let me ask you this thing here, and let's say GMAT were not a timed exam. That's never going to happen, but let's say it were not a timed exam. In that scenario, would you have enjoyed reading comprehension? Okay, so even if I took away the whole timing aspect of reading comprehension, you wouldn't have really started to enjoy reading comprehension. So tell me, why is that the case? Tell me, why is that the case? Lack of focus and forget interconnections between the paragraphs. Okay, what else? General lack of reading, lack of vocabulary. Okay, so now we are getting to the main reason why you don't really enjoy RC. It's the boring topics, confusing and complex topics, hard science passages, confusing and complex passages. So really, it's not the timing aspect of the test. It is the whole nature of reading comprehension that bogs you down, that takes your interest away from reading comprehension. Now, and that happens because you don't really have a very solid approach to how to read a passage, right? Okay, so let's get some more objective response now. Uh, a little more objective response. So I'm going to show you. So I'm going to get a poll ready here, and what I want you to do is I want you to tell me which reason do you associate with. All right, what is the one reason? There you go. All right. So I'm going to mark what the most popular response is. It is not, the answer choices are very close. The one which is right behind it is not enough time, and we know that timing is a big culprit. So really the answer choices are very close, not and timing constraint, and then passages are too complex. So whatever you guys told me up front through your subjective responses, similar picture is being painted over here as well. Now the answer choices are very close. This is a reason, yes, but it is usually an artifact of something else that's going on in your interaction with reading comprehension, and we're going to be talking about that. Okay. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's move away from reading comprehension slightly and tell me what do you think is the difference between an active reader and a passive reader? Tell me, what is the difference between an active reader and a passive reader? Okay. Passive just reads, active knows flow, retention. Active reader tries to understand, only read the most pertinent concepts or details. A passive reader skims through while an active reader retains the test. Okay, I still haven't gotten that precise answer. Active reader getting immersed. Yes, absolutely right. Active reader is constantly piecing together the whole story and details in his or her mind. Absolutely correct. That is absolutely spot on. Passive reader just takes in the information. Yes, you're right. All right, active reader associate himself with the passage. Okay, so a number of good answers, and thank you so much for that. So, an active reader is completely engaged in the passage. An active reader is constantly, and I'm using the same term that the student used. Active reader is constantly piecing together the entire story and the details in his or her own mind as he or she is reading the passage, and that is something which, if you start doing, you are surely to improve upon your reading ability, which means you're surely going to improve upon your ability in reading comprehension. Now tell me one thing, how many of you believe that if you do become an active reader, you will be able to do well in RC? Given that you understand the difference between who an active reader is and who a passive reader is, or what classifies an active and a passive reader. Okay. So now let me ask you another thing. How many of you feel that you need to be an avid reader to become an active reader? Okay, about half of the class believes that. And that is a very big fallacy. You don't necessarily need to be an avid reader, okay, to become an active reader. You can definitely learn that skill. Okay, and that is precisely what we're going to be talking about in this session. Okay, but one thing that I want you to understand is that if you become an active reader, you are definitely going to improve upon your reading comprehension ability. Not being an active reader is the one thing that keeps you away from actually acing reading comprehension. So in this session, my goal is to help you ace reading comprehension. And how am I going to be doing that? I'm going to be first telling you how is it that you can get the maximum amount of information from the passage in the first read of the passage itself. How is it that you first read the passage, you assimilate everything that's there in it, and then you move on to the questions. Okay. For this purpose, I'm going to be introducing to you reading strategies. And then I'm going to be demonstrating these strategies to you through two small passages. Okay. So by the end of this session, you will have a very good understanding of what it is that it's going to take you to become an active reader. Okay. And how is it that you're going to be applying that active reading capability in order to ace reading comprehension. Then, secondly, what we need to do is once you do get everything that you needed to get from the passage, how do you use that information to answer questions? And that is going to be the second part of our session here. And I'm going to be demonstrating that through a main point question and through an inference question. Okay. And towards the end, I'm going to be putting it all together into a study plan for reading comprehension. Okay. All right, so we'll begin our reading strategies, but just one little housekeeping note that I want to make. Whatever questions I ask you, please put in the responses for those in the short answer poll. The Q&A pod is really for the questions that generate from you. So basically, if you have a question for me and I'm unable to answer that question in my regular flow of the session, then Shraddha is there to respond to your questions. Or if you have any other questions regarding GMAT strategy, then Sandeep is there to help you out there. So put your questions in Q&A pod, but the questions that I ask you, put your responses in the short answer poll or the poll that I give you towards the right hand side of your screen. Okay. All right. So let's get started with the reading strategies. Now, your journey to acing GMAT RC starts with having that right attitude towards RC. How many of you are scared of GMAT RC? You consider it to be a nemesis, the one thing that stops you from getting that V42, V44, or that 750, that 760 score. How many of you believe that RC is your nemesis? So, if you really want to change, if you really want to get to that target score, you need to change this attitude. You need to first take away from your mind that RC is this devil that you can't really get across. Okay, RC is not at all as evil as it seems. Okay. So as I said, you need to become an active reader in order to ace RC. Now, what does becoming an active reader entail? The first thing that an active reader does is that he immerses himself into the passage. You need to approach the passage with this attitude of the active reader. Okay. It's a game of mental attitude and get that aptitude right. Tell yourself, if I'm taking the GMAT, then the passage that I see in front of me is going to get me, actually has the opportunity to get me at least 3 questions correct. Okay. And answering those 3 questions correct is going to help me move towards that 750 score. It's going to help me get closer to the admit to my dream school and to that scholarship. That is what should motivate you to put in everything that you have into that passage. Okay. And frankly speaking, I cannot tell you how to immerse yourself in the passage. It's you who has to it's you who have to build that attitude on your own. Okay. Now, what do I mean by getting immersed in the passage? What I mean by that is no matter whether the topic on the screen interests you or not. Okay. No matter whether you would ever read that topic ever again in your life, no matter whether you have ever read that topic ever before in your life. Okay. But when you see that topic on the screen, you have to be absolutely devoted to that topic. Okay. Nothing else in the world should matter to you at that point in time. Okay. At that point in time, it's just you and the author of that article and the article that you see in front of you. And that article is actually that conversation piece. That article and what all goes on in your mind is actually formulates that entire conversation between you and the author. Okay. And it may seem a lot of just theoretical stuff that I'm talking about. But really, if you start to just remind yourself that this is the passage that I'm absolutely interested in, okay, this is the only thing that matters to me in the world, you will see an immense difference in how you start to apply the other strategies. Okay, and this act of immersion is something that you have to do for each and every passage that you see from now onwards. Is this point clear? When I see things like, oh, it's a science passage, it's really hard, I don't care about it, or it's humanities, I don't care about it. Why do I care about reading regarding women empowerment or any other humanities topic? I want you to not have those thoughts. Consciously remove those thoughts from the mind and replace those thoughts with the fact that, oh, the author has spent so much time in creating this passage. The least I can do is given my 8 minutes to, or given my, again, 8 minutes is on the higher side here, but we are not talking about timing aspect, give my time so that I can do justice to what the author has said. Okay. All right. So now that as that thing is taken care of, now how do I apply? What are these other reading strategies that we need to apply? But again, as I said earlier, you need to have that attitude right before you can start to consciously and correctly apply these reading strategies that we're going to be talking about. Now, there are three key reading strategies here, and three of them are in some or the other way connected with one another, and I'll tell you what do I mean by that. The first and the foremost reading strategy is understand the sentence structure. How many of you today think that one single sentence is the smallest building block of a reading comprehension passage? Okay. The answer here is it is not. It is not a single sentence that is the smallest building block of a reading comprehension passage. It is the idea within that single sentence that is the smallest building block. Okay. Now, why is it important to understand what the building block of a reading comprehension passage is? It's important because you when you are reading a passage, and if you pause only after the entire sentence is done, then there is a lot of information that you are not grasping. From this point on, I want you to break down the sentence into smaller chunks so that you can understand each and every idea that has been presented in the passage. Okay, and that's the reason why it's so very important to understand what is the building block of a reading comprehension passage. A building block of an RC passage is not a sentence, it is the idea in a particular sentence. So an idea is the building block. And in order for you to understand each and every idea that has been presented, you need to understand this. You need to understand how to break down a sentence into its smaller parts. And that is something which we teach in our master comprehension course. Okay. Now, certainly you are going to have, and as soon as I was about to mention the timing aspect, I see a question in the Q&A pod. Do we have that much time in the exam to understand sentence structure? A very valid question. Okay. But the answer to that question is yes. Okay. When you are ready to take the exam, the timing aspect with regards to how you apply these reading strategies is going to be addressed very comfortably. Okay. So you don't have to worry about that. But when you start to apply these reading strategies today, you are going to take time. You are not going to be able to apply these reading strategies within the timing constraints of the exam today. Okay, because, and it's very simple. Why is that the case? Tell me. Why is that the case? Why in the exam you'll be able, timing is not an issue, but why is it going to be an issue right now? Absolutely right. Learning a skill takes time. It's not about practice, it's about learning a skill. This is a skill that you are building. Okay, and whenever you start to learn a skill, you do take time because you're picking up that skill. Okay, so everything that I'm going to be talking about right now is something which is going to enable you in the exam to ace reading comprehension. But right now, when you are learning those skills, you are going to take time, that's for sure. Okay, so thank you for asking me that question. So I hope that addresses the timing constraint. Okay, so but the main thing over here is that if you don't read in the right manner, if you don't read in an active manner, then you're not going to comprehend, and if you're not able to comprehend, you're not going to be able to, you will not be able to solve the questions. Okay, so there is no other way to approach reading comprehension. Okay, all the other ways about actually let me ask you right now, what is your strategy for reading a passage? I'm kind of deviating from my usual thing, but I think it's important. If I'm telling you my strategy, I think it's fair enough for me to first know what is your strategy towards reading comprehension. Get key sentences from each passage. That strategy is not going to work because you how do you know what is a key sentence? Okay, skim for keywords. Skimming doesn't work because if you, again, keywords are very important. Okay, but how you utilizing those keywords is not really the right way, because you are skimming for keywords. While skimming for those keywords, you're going to be missing out on the important points. Read the question first, keep those in mind, and then read the reading comprehension passage. Absolutely no. Please do not read the question first, ever. Okay, read the passage first and only then start reading the question. Because again, if you think about it, if you're reading the first question first, how is that going to help you understand the passage? If you have already read the question, you already have that stress on your mind, that pressure on your mind, that, oh my God, did I find the answer yet? Oh my God, I'm already halfway through the passage. Did I find the answer yet? Okay, you don't need that kind of pressure in an already stressful situation of the exam. Read first and last para with a lot of attention and skim the middle paragraph. Absolutely not. Each and every part of the passage is important. So you need to understand the utility of each and every part of the passage. So there is no undue importance of a first line or the first paragraph or the last line or the last paragraph. No. Getting through the passage, stopping along the way to reread sentences as needed to try and form the complete image. Absolutely right. Very nice. All right, so good. So I think so I've addressed a couple of strategies that you guys are using. So now let me come back to the to my slide over here and talk about the strategies which we propose here. So the first strategy is understand the sentence structure, and that's absolutely essential, because you need to understand the building, you need to understand the building block of the RC passage. Okay, now again, how can you learn that? As I said, you can learn these strategies. You can learn how to understand the sentence structure from our master comprehension course, which is the foundation course of all verbal. Now I'm going to be demonstrating this strategy to you as I go through the two passages that I have, and you'll get a fairly good idea as to what I mean by understand the sentence structure. Now let's move on to our second strategy. The second strategy is predict the thoughts through keywords. And yes, as I said, keywords are very, very important. Now, the question, so let me first tell you, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by predicting? Let's say the author in the passage has given a positive certain positive aspect of a certain situation, right? And then he says, having said that. Now, what do you think the author is going to say after having said that? He's going to give a contrast. He's absolutely right. He's going to give something which is against, which is in a different direction from the positive aspects that he had mentioned about this certain situation, right? So he's saying, yes, this is positive, but then, not everything is rosy, okay? I mean, not everything in this situation is actually rosy. That's what he's going to say. Now, what did you do here? What you did over here was you predicted what the author is going to say next by utilizing the hints that the author has provided. Okay, and that's a very important thing for you to understand. Consider the author to be your friend. Don't consider the author of the passage to be this opponent whom you have to beat. No. Consider him as your friend. Why am I saying that? Because you are in this conversation with your friend, and your friend is actually giving you these clues along the way so that you can absolutely follow along what he's saying. Okay, and the minute you start doing this role play, you'll start to feel that the passage is no longer that undefeated thing. The passage is really something that you want to truly interact with. Okay, so that's the whole idea of this reading strategy, that you are getting in that conversation with the author and you are utilizing the clues that the author has given to you so that you can understand what the complete picture that the author is presenting. Okay, is this strategy clear? And again, I'm going to be demonstrating each of these strategies through the two passages, but on a theoretical level, do you understand these strategies? Good. Now, the last strategy is summarize and predict what's next. And you may question me that how is third different from the second? Okay. Here, yes, both involve prediction, but over here, the focus is really on the summarizing part. Okay. Prediction, not so much. In this case, even if you don't do the prediction, that's absolutely fine, because in this case, the prediction may not be accurate all the time. Over here in strategy number 2, your prediction is always accurate. Why? Because you're predicting based on the keyword. In this case, in strategy number 3, your prediction is really based on, okay, given what the author has said, I think the author is going to say blah, blah, blah. Okay, but the author may take a different direction as well. That's why predicting over here in strategy number 3 is not really always precise, but the whole point of predicting in strategy number 3 is that to keep you engaged with the passage, to keep you actively interacting with the passage. Okay, but the key thing over here, as I said, is the summarization part. Now, why is summary important? Tell me one thing. When you were reading, let's say, one of your textbooks during your schooling years, or during your college years, how many times did you try to put the stuff in your own words in order to understand that piece of content better? Right. You used to take down notes, right? When you took down notes, you were actually writing those things, or taking down notes in your own words. And when you translate a certain piece of text into your own words, you understand that text a whole lot better. And that is what the summarize term over here does in strategy number 3. What you're doing is you are trying to avoid that overload of information, and at the same time you're trying to ensure that your understanding is absolutely crystal clear, and for that you are summarizing the information. Now, when should you summarize should be a next logical question. The answer to that is, as soon as you start to feel that there is that overload of information that's happening, you summarize what the author has said and then you move on. Okay, so there is no set guideline here in terms of whether you should summarize after every two sentences or after every paragraph. It all depends upon you and the complexity of the passage as to when you should pause and summarize. Okay. Now, if you think about it, the first reading strategy is on the sentence level. Okay. The second reading strategy is within a paragraph. And the third reading strategy is both within a paragraph, as I said, and among paragraphs. Okay. So now that we are clear with these strategies, what we're going to do is we are going to apply these strategies slowly to improve comprehension. The operating word here is slowly. Okay, we are not going to rush. If you rush through these strategies, you are not following the strategies. Okay, if you say I applied these strategies swiftly, then that you didn't apply the strategies then. Okay, so in order for you to apply these strategies, you have to go slowly. Okay, right now timing doesn't matter. You're learning this new skill. Okay, but as you start to apply these strategies, as you start to build your skill, you are going to be able to um, beat the timing aspect here as well, and I am going to prove that as well. Okay, I'm going to show you real examples of students who have benefited tremendously from these strategies. Okay, now there is one more tactical strategy to help you read an RC passage, and that is to abbreviate the terms. When you see a very complex technical term used in the passage, just abbreviate it. Don't let it act as a road bump. Just abbreviate it and move on. Okay, and I would suggest that you try doing that in this passage that you see next. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a passage, and it's a very small passage. Okay, and I want you to first read the passage. I'm going to give you a poll in which I want you to take down your notes. Okay, and you don't need to continue typing the notes as you are reading through the passage. I want you to write down your notes in your scratch pad. Take as many notes as you want to in your scratch pad. When you are done reading the passage, then summarize your notes and put those notes in the in the poll that I enable for you. Okay, and again, as I said, I'm not going to be timing you guys. What I'll do is let all of you please click on no here. And as soon as you're done reading the passage, click on yes. That way I know that you guys are done reading the passage. And as soon as about 60% of the class clicks yes, I'm going to be showing you the question for that passage. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's go here. Here's your passage. All right, I'm going to show you the question now. Here's the question, and I'm going to get you the poll as well. There are only 4 choices in this question. There you go. All right, so I'm going to do one more thing. Um, I'm going to show you. Uh, okay, I'm going to end this poll now. And what I'm going to do is give you opportunities to tell me why you rejected each of the choices that you rejected. So let's go with choice A. For those of you who rejected choice A, why did you reject choice A? Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Good. I like the enthusiasm in putting in the responses. Good. I like that. Let's do choice B now. For those of you who rejected B, why did you reject? And don't say B is correct if you if you selected B as the correct choice. Tell me, why did you reject choice B if you reject? All right, I'm going to end this poll now. Let's move on to number choice C. There you go. All right, I'm going to get choice D. Go ahead. Don't say it's the correct choice. Just tell me, if you rejected choice D, why did you reject it? Okay, good. Very nice. All right, so we'll bring those back when we discuss the question. All right, so let's get started with the answer choices with the answer choice analysis. How many of you felt that when you did the review of each and every choice and when you put in the answer to why you rejected the choice, how many of you felt as if you're getting more clarity or you're getting more confidence? Good. So I want you to do this activity, do this exercise every time you answer a question. Okay. Make sure that whatever answer choice you are so you are going to be rejecting four choices, right? Make sure that you have a very at least one solid reason for rejecting that answer choice, and you should be able to express that reason very well. Okay, as soon as you start doing that, you will realize that the if you have good comprehension of the passage and if you do this activity on responding to a question, you will see that the answer choices would not appear to be as close as they used to appear early on. Okay, so always do this. Don't be simply on the lookout for the correct answer. You need to make sure that you are rejecting each answer choice on solid grounds. Okay, and guys, I want you to take that timing aspect out of your mind right now. This is a new skill that you're building. If I'm sitting here right now and teaching you these reading strategies, you can take my word for it and the successes that we have had that these strategies work for students. And these strategies would not work for students if they didn't beat the whole timing aspect of the test, right? So I think you can give me that level of trust, and so that because if you don't trust the strategies, you won't be able to learn them. Okay, so again, I will prove to you that these strategies work. You're going to be seeing the first proof is that I'm sitting here and I'm teaching these strategies. I wouldn't be teaching you if these strategies didn't work. Okay, so again, if you don't trust the strategies, you will not, you are doing yourself a lot of harm because you yourself have that doubt. And if you have that doubt, you're not going to be able to learn that skill. Okay. All right. So let's now first go through the passage and understand the passage. I will broadcast the results because I know you guys would be thinking what the correct answer is. The correct answer here is choice D. And I understand you're going to be having doubts because for those of you who didn't select choice D for the right, who didn't select choice D, about half of the class, you will have doubts as to why the other choice that you selected is not correct. Don't worry about that. Focus on comprehension right now. We'll get to that. Okay. Okay, I have this question here, and I do want to address that question before I move on. Um, I have only 15, so I totally believe these strategies will work. My main worry is that for someone like me, with 15 to 20 days to go, do we have enough time to learn and apply this effectively? And my answer to you, Jay, is absolutely yes. You only need about, I would say, you only need to spend, let's say, about 10 to 20 hours properly in order to master these strategies. Okay, and I'm going to break that down for you as I give you the study plan. But definitely, you have ample amount of time to learn these strategies. Okay, all right. So I'll take this up towards the end as well. So now first let's get back to the passage and let's understand what the passage is, what the author is saying here. Now, as I read this passage, I'm going to be asking you questions so that so be ready to put in your answers here. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. Okay, now I'm going to pause here. Why am I pausing here? Because there's just quite a bit of information even though these are just about 8 words, but there's still quite a bit of information that's here, and I want to just understand that before I move further. So, bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. Now, what does this line bordering on the extreme mean? What does this phrase bordering on the extreme mean? It's a modifier, yes. It's out of the norm. Extreme level of definition. Absolutely, yes. The author feels it's an extreme definition. Absolutely, yes. Okay. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. So the author is presenting one definition of ethnocentrism, and he's saying, by the way, it borders on the extreme. By the way, it's an exaggerated definition. Okay. Now, is the definition, how many of you feel that is the definition that is exaggerated? Yes, it's the definition that's exaggerated. How many of you feel that it's the concept ethnocentrism that's exaggerated? Okay, it is not the concept. It is the definition that is exaggerated, because that's what this modifier over here is describing, the one definition of ethnocentrism. Okay. Now, I've been saying the word ethnocentrism. Clearly, would you consider ethnocentrism to be a technical term? Yes. So what are we going to do with this technical term? We are going to shorten it up as EC. Absolutely right. Abbreviated. You can shorten it up to E as well. That's absolutely fine. I decided to shorten it up as EC. Okay. EC, ethnocentrism. Okay. So let's now carry further here. I'm going to remove these annotations. So what we have understood is that that the definition of ethnocentrism is exaggerated. Now, would you think that this now who thinks, okay, so let me ask you this. Who thinks that this definition of ethnocentrism is exaggerated? The author thinks. Absolutely right. The author thinks. Okay. So this is the author's view, right? That the definition is that this definition um, is exaggerated is the author's view, right? Okay. So let's carry further here. One definition of EC considers what? Considers EC a schematic in-group out-group differentiation in which. Now, I'm going to pause here again. Why? Because beyond in which, I'm going to see some more descriptive information. But let me first understand what it is that I've read so far. Okay. So one definition of ethnocentrism considers it refers to ethnocentrism, considers ethnocentrism a schematic in-group out-group differentiation. A schematic, I don't really know the meaning of this word schematic. So because I don't know the meaning of this word, I'm just going to replace it as some kind of in-group out-group differentiation. Now, what does in-group out-group differentiation mean? How will I translate this in my own words? In-group out-group differentiation. There is some difference in two groups, okay? My people and other people. Absolutely right. Okay. So there is some kind of difference in based on these two groups. Absolutely right. In which now I read further. So basically, what this definition is, that according to this definition, EC is some kind of difference between the in group, between my group and the other group. Okay. In which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in group are correlated with a state of hostility toward outgroups, which, so I'm going to pause here again. Now, if you think about it, over here in this chunk, I've read quite a few words. Okay, so it's okay to go back and reread these words. Okay, in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and something are correlated, are linked with a state of hostility toward outgroup. Okay. Now, what do these terms, how can you summarize these terms? Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group. These are positive characters towards the in-group, positive characteristics towards the in-groups, or positive feelings towards the in-group. These are not characteristics of the in-group. These are feelings towards the in-group. Okay. So, or what I can say is it's love for your own people. It's love for your own people. It's positive emotions towards your own people. Now, these positive emotions are correlated, are linked with a state of hostility, with hatred towards outside people. Okay, that is what this part is saying. Okay, so it's not these are not characteristics of EC. This is not evaluation of EC. This is not positive or negative aspects of EC. All this is describing is that according to this definition of EC, if you love your own people, that directly is linked to hatred towards outside people. Okay? Which are often perceived as subhuman and or the incorporation of evil. Now, which refers to the outgroups. By the way, these outgroups are actually perceived as evil. Okay? That's all this is saying. So overall, if you think about it in this sentence, the author, in this passage, which is really a single sentence, the author has presented one definition of EC. Okay, he's saying that this definition is a bit exaggerated. And then according to this definition, these two things are correlated. Love for your own people is linked with hatred towards outside people. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you this question here. Let me get the poll. Where did my poll go? What I want you to tell me is which ones were you able to infer. Let me just create one here. So out of these three, which ones were you able to infer? Which ones did you get from the passage when you read it on your own? 1, 2, 3. Okay, hold on. I want to get quantitative data here. So you can select more than one. Let me change the poll here. Sorry about that. Edit. Okay, go ahead. Select the ones which you were able to get from the passage when you read the passage on your own. Not right now, but on your own. Okay, let's get a few more responses here. Okay. All right, I'm surprised that that you guys are not putting in your answers here. Can you guys hear me clearly? All right. You can. Okay. I was surprised that the counter here was stuck here. Okay, so let's get a few more responses here for this question. Which ones did you get from the passage? All right, I'm not sure why you guys are not putting in your responses here. Okay, so if you think about it, the first one presents one definition of EC, which for those of you who put in, you basically got, a number of you got that, is directly given to you on the passage, in the passage. It's basically given to you in the passage, right? Now, the second one required an inference to be drawn. Okay, because the author is saying bordering on the extreme, one definition, so you needed to infer that aspect over here, right? So there was that inference to be drawn, so that's an inference skill. The third one over here, according to the definition, these two are correlated. there is that summarization skill that is required. Okay. So whenever you're preparing for RC and you review the solution, okay, always make sure that you are getting things as you are supposed to. And look at, if you did get a certain point, always try to think about why is it that you didn't get that? Is it that you didn't see the information that was directly given to you? Is it that you were not able to draw inference? Is it that you were not able to summarize? Okay. As soon as you start doing that, you start to understand what kind of skills you need to build. Okay. Now, if you notice inference to be drawn, you don't necessarily, so it's not that you have a question type as well. Okay. So you have a question type as well in RC, which is an inference question type, right? So, but your inference skill need not be limited to just answering those kinds of questions. You need to be able to draw inferences as you are reading the passage. Okay. So right now for this passage, I only have a main point question, right? But we are, but we have to draw inferences when we are reading the passage. Okay. So I have a question here. Aren't these points evaluatory in a sense? These points may be evaluatory, but is the author evaluating ethnocentrism? That is the question that you have to ask. When I'm reading the passage, I am applying my strategies and I'm making sure that I'm getting each and everything in the passage. So I'm in that conversation with the author. Now, I'm not evaluating whether the positive and the negative features of the passage. That's not what I'm doing, but I'm understanding it. I'm comprehending it. Okay. So we need to use the word evaluate in a very cautiously. Okay. Whenever you evaluate something, you're trying to find the positive aspects of it and the negative aspects of it, the pros and the cons. When I'm reading the passage, I'm not really trying to find the pros and the cons of the passage. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to break it down into smaller chunks so that I can understand it. Okay. All right. So now let's come to the question. Let's look at choice A, and I'm going to bring the poll for choice A out. So choice A is wrong. Very few people selected it, and the answers that the reason that you provided is also correct. There is no criticism over here. The author is simply saying that is simply that so that there is no criticism at all. And the concept doesn't really encourage hostility. It's simply saying that according to this, if you love your own people, you're going to hate outside people. Okay. But the concept itself, EC itself, is not really encouraging hostility towards people, towards not your own people. Okay. Second one, to evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while enlisting its various features. Let's bring the poll for choice B. There is no evaluation. Absolutely right. There is no evaluation and there are no features listed. Now, for those of you who selected choice B, and there were quite a few of you, let me get that poll as well over here. Oh, sorry. Somehow the results went off. Yeah, so there were quite a few of you who selected choice B. Now, really, in this choice, there is no evaluation in this passage, there is no evaluation. Now, the reason why you may have felt that there is evaluation is because there is that positive and the negative um, positive that there's certain positive aspects and there are certain negative aspects, but you need to understand the roles played by those positive and negative aspects. Okay, you saw all those terms signifying the love for your own people, and those other that hostility that shows the hostility towards outside people. So you thought, okay, that's the positive and the negative, and that's enough to for me to select evaluate as the correct choice, but that is not correct. Okay, and the place where you faltered here was you were simply skimming at the surface. You didn't really understand what the positive and the negative aspects are actually doing. Are they positive and the negative of ethnocentrism? No, they are not. If they are not, then you can't really utilize them to say that, okay, those are the pros and the cons of the ethnocentrism. The other thing, enlisting its various features. If you selected choice B, you most likely selected it because you saw that all those features have been listed. So you thought, oh, there are these different features listed. So that means choice B will be correct. But if you think about it, this was this is a, I would say, quote unquote trap that the test maker has put in. He's actually relying on you catching on to these things by relating those certain aspects in the passage. Okay. But if you focus on understanding um, the essence of each and every part of the passage, you will, or understanding the role played by each and every part, you will not fall in such traps. Okay. I have another comment here. I was a bit unclear if it should be B, since I couldn't be clear if the definition was actually considered as features. Well, even if you consider definition as feature, it's not various features. It's a single definition. I mean, first of all, definition cannot be feature, right? But even if you consider that, it's not various features. It's just a single definition. Okay, so again, summarizing the whole passage in your own words is very, very important before you look at a question, before you look at answer choices, because what happens is whatever sticks to your mind, that is what you get. You're looking at those hooks in the answer choices, but then those hooks are actually put in there as traps. So I don't want you to get hooked onto those traps. What if there are some sentences which are too complex to understand? That is where you apply the sentence structure strategy. Okay. Okay, so now let's move on to choice C, which was also selected by quite a few of you. This was the second most popular choice after the correct choice. To define the concept of ethnocentrism, which leads to hierarchy. Now, tell me one thing. We know that the author has presented um, this definition, and by the way, the author has presented one definition, and it's an extreme definition. Now, put yourself in the author's shoes. Let's say you've been tasked to define a certain term. Will you define it by will your job of defining that term be considered as done if all you have presented is an exaggerated definition? Yes or no? No. Absolutely right. Your job is not done if all you've presented is just the exaggerated definition. Okay? So this is what I want you to do. For certain choices where you are not able to exactly pinpoint that, okay, why this choice is wrong, could be wrong, I want you to do this role playing exercise. Okay, and translate the scenario, take the scenario to something that you are comfortable with, and ask yourself, if I were to define, let's say, the term tuck time, will I only define it by giving the most extreme definition? And the answer is no. Okay, so always put yourself in the shoes of that particular choice, right? Try to humanize that choice, and then see whether that applies or not in the context of the passage. Okay, that's a very, very short way of making sure that choices that are quote unquote close. Okay, why am I saying quote unquote close? Because they are not really close, but they appear to be close to people who don't do this kind of exercise. Okay, so it's very, very important to do that role playing exercise. So here again, because the only definition that the author presented one definition, and that itself is exaggerated. So his role couldn't have been to define ethnocentrism. Okay. The other thing, which leads to hierarchy among social groups, there is no hierarchy. that EC leads to. EC is simply utilizing the social group structure and saying that if you love your own people, then you're going to hate outside people. That's all it's saying. Now, choice D is absolutely correct, to introduce the concept of ethnocentrism by presenting a view on it. And that is what you again bring back that role playing exercise here. If you were to if you present if you were to introduce a certain concept, you will it's absolutely fine for you to introduce it by presenting an extreme definition. Okay, you are setting the stage. When you're introducing, you're setting the stage. So it's not okay, it is not really required that you provide to the point thing. You can actually start off with the extreme definition, exaggerated view. By presenting a view on it, absolutely right. It actually encapsulates each and every aspect of this passage from the author's role perspective, from the purpose of the author perspective. Okay. So choice D is correct. So now tell me, what have you learned from this exercise? Tell me, what have you learned from this exercise? The whole exercise of first paragraph, for first question. Good. Role playing was new aspect, the use of strategy, not to rush for answers, try to reject. I was confused between no hierarchy was my okay. So your reason to reject choice C was correct, okay, because there's no hierarchy mentioned. But I think you need to be able to select uh, to define was the more that was a more solid reason to reject the choice. So you need to build that ability. Okay, but that's okay. I mean, sometimes there's more than one thing which is wrong with with the choice, and it's okay to pinpoint one and move on. Okay, but when you are in that practice mode, I want you to get all the reasons why a particular choice is wrong, because you are building your skill to be able to sniff out the wrong choices. Okay. All right, good. Now tell me one thing. Do you think RC is conquerable? How many of you what do you guys feel about your level of confidence that yes, I can do it? Tell me about that. What's your take on that? 80% can do it, 70% avoiding traps. Will take a lot of practice, yes. Depends on the passage. No, it doesn't depend on the passage. It depends on you. I want you guys to have that level of confidence that yes, I can do. With more practice, I can do good. Okay. This is a skill that you absolutely have to build. Okay. And believe me, this is a lifelong skill. If you build that skill now, it is going to help you throughout your life. Okay, you start to read anything and everything with that lens of evaluation, with that lens of I want to understand what the author is saying. And believe me, it's such an empowering feeling. No piece of text would be able to scare you, and that's a very, very powerful feeling. Okay, so what I want to tell you is this was a difficult passage. It wasn't an easy passage. For those of you who selected the correct choice for the right reasons, it's good. The reading strategies are already working for you. Keep at it. For those of you who made a mistake, but you were able to understand what was going on in the passage, the strategies have started to work. Don't give up. Okay. For those of you who had no idea as to what's going on, okay, when you read the passage, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's just English. It's no rocket science, right? You need to simply get immersed a little bit more. You need to trust the author. More than that, you need to trust yourself. Okay. and you need to trust that it's English. All you have to do is understand. Understanding is not difficult. We are all logical people. Okay, these are logically connected thoughts. Okay, so if I just have to flip that switch in my mind and know, okay, these are all logical could be connected pieces, and logically connected pieces, and I can understand logic. Okay. All right. So, as I said, I'm going to be sharing certain success stories with you so that it's one thing that you hear it from me. It's another thing that you get the confidence that these strategies have been applied by students just like you so that you get that level of confidence. Okay. Frankly, I can sit here and I can say, trust me, I'm doing this, so these would have worked. But if you hear it from actual students, you are going to get that much more level of trust in these strategies. Okay. So here's the interview with Nishant, who went from 40 percentile ability in RC to 79 percentile in RC with the confidence that in his last attempt, in which he scored 740, he would have gotten all RCs correct. Okay. Now, when you watch Nishant's interview, what you will see is that he first faltered while applying the strategies. He applied them hurriedly. Okay, and this is what I told you up front. If you're applying the strategies hurriedly, then you're not really applying them. And that's the same mistake that Nishant did. So I want you to go through his interview because I don't want you to make the mistake that he made. And that is why these students take the time to talk to us so that they can help other people, they can help all of you not make the mistakes that they have made. Okay. Now, when I say he applied the strategies hurriedly, he would read the what I mean by that is he would read the passage in 2 minutes and then he would jump to solving questions. Okay. He would reread the passage to answer the questions, and accordingly he faltered. And we are going to go through this mode towards the later part of the session. Now, despite applying these strategies, he was taking, and he wasn't applying them the right way, and he was taking 1.5 to 2 minutes per question, and he felt that his understanding of the passage was not sound enough to help him answer these questions. And that is when, after hearing from another successful e-GMATer, he started applying the strategies slowly, something that we have been doing in this session. What he learned the hard way was that reading strategies are a means to the end. So there is no point in rushing through the strategies if the end goal of understanding the passage is not being met. Once he changed this mindset, and once he gave himself good 4 minutes to read the passage, he was able to answer questions from that passage in 30 seconds or fewer. That was the level of his confidence, and that was the power of comprehension. So, really, if you think about it, just do some math here. All you're doing here is you are moving the time from each and every question into upfront when to understand the passage. That's what you're doing. Okay. In the grand scheme of things of answering an RC passage, it's just redistribution of time in the manner that gets you high accuracy for that RC passage. All right. So, are you ready for the next passage? Yes or no? Okay, good. So, can you all please click on no here? No for not having read the passage yet. And I'm going to get the notes pane as well. All right, here you go. All right, I'm going to show the question now. Here's the question. I'm going to get you the poll. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So, how was this passage? Yes, tell me, how did you do in this passage? Felt better will depend on the results, smiled all throughout with it. Okay. Passage easy, question hard. Okay, so that's a good point. Passage easy, question hard. Whenever you feel this way, when you're doing your own, when you're practicing on your own, consider that to be a signal of lack of comprehension. Okay, when you feel that the passage is easy but the question is difficult, then it's most likely that you haven't understood the passage to the extent that you were supposed to understand. Okay, so that's a very good tell for lack of comprehension. Okay, so good. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Better on approach strategies, good. Easier than the earlier, tough, bit tough. Felt better, answer choices are close. Similarly, whenever you feel that the answer choices are close, consider that to be an indication that you don't have proper comprehension. Okay, see, everything boils down to comprehension, frankly speaking. Okay, and I'm going to prove that to you right now when as we go through this passage. Um, but before we do that, uh, let's let's look at this particular sentence. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people. Okay, now what can you infer from this statement? Now, for those of you who have marked choice 1, you're absolutely correct that some people regard the color blue as soothing. But if you're saying the color blue is soothing, that's a fact. And that is not what you can infer based on the statement that has been given to me over here. This is not correct. This linkage, you can't say that color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of most people. You cannot infer from this statement that the color blue is indeed soothing all the time. No, that cannot be done. According to this particular statement, all the author is saying is that there is this segment of people who consider color blue as soothing. Now, when you start to say that the color blue is soothing, you're saying that it's a universal fact. And that is not what this choice is saying. That is not what the author is saying. Okay? So now let's move on to the passage. Ethnocentrism, EC, and its canonical variants, some kind of variants, are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to pause here. Okay. Xenophobia, I'm going to be shortening up as XP. Now, what is this choice saying? No, sorry. So what is first sentence saying? EC and some of its variants are deemed to be intimately connected with XP. How will you summarize this sentence on your own? They are connected in some manner, absolutely right. They are connected in some manner, but there is something missing here. According to some people, they are connected in some manner. If you say EC and XP are connected, then that you're stating that as a complete fact that everyone thinks that EC and XP are connected. But over here, look at the word are deemed. This means that there are some people who think that EC and XP are connected. And this may seem like a very, non-consequential aspect, but this is very, very important. In a passage, as you're reading it, you always need to know what you are reading. Is it a fact? Is it an opinion of all the people? Okay. Again, if it's an opinion of all the people, then that actually becomes a fact because everyone believes in that, right? Or is it opinion of a certain set of people? Okay. Or is it the opinion of the author? Okay, so all these aspects you have to be very, very cognizant of. As you're reading the passage, you need to be able to distinguish between facts, between opinions of a segment of people, and what does the author actually believe in. Who does the author agree with? Who does the author not agree with? Okay, those things are very, very important. So, everyone clear about this part? EC and XP are considered to be intimately connected with xenophobia. All right, now let's read further. A complex attitude system cum sentiment structure, some complex structure involving aversion or dislike and antagonism, involving hatred towards the strange or alien, towards outside people, and everything that the stranger or the alien represents. Now, what is this part over here, the part that I just read? What does that part describe? Or what is how can you summarize this part? It's the definition of XP. Absolutely right. It's a definition of XP. Okay. And what is that definition? That definition is that XP is some kind of complex structure in which there is hatred towards strange, there is hatred towards aliens and everything that the aliens represent. Okay. Now, there is no love for your own people over here. All it's saying is that according to XP definition, what is XP? XP is a complex structure in which there is hatred towards aliens, okay, towards others. All right, now tell me one thing. This definition here, does everyone agree with this definition here? Yes or no? Yes, everyone agrees in this definition. Why? Because it's a fact. Okay, if it's a fact, it's a definition. Everyone agrees with the definition. It's a fact. Okay, now let's read further. Some socio-cultural anthropologists, some being the operating word, some experts even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. Now, again, this part over here is view of certain set of experts. So would you say that XP and EC are opposite sides of same coin is a fact? No, it's not a fact. It's a view of only a particular segment of people. Okay. Some experts even considered. Now, why do you think the author has used the word even? What is the significance of the word even? It is not a contrast. It's an extreme view. Absolutely right. Emphasize that they are connected. It's in support of the previous point. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So what he's saying to emphasize the connection. Okay, so there is no contrast here. Think about it. What in up front the author said that there are some people who think that these two are closely connected. Intimately connected means closely connected. Now, not only that, there are actually some people who think that they coexist. Okay, so even is actually taking this intimately connected view to an extreme. Okay, so there are some people who think that these two are opposite sides of the same coin, that if one exists, the other has to exist. So here you have to know, you have to infer what does not infer, you have to apply your understanding of what opposite sides of the same coin mean. Yes, they are opposites, but they are also coexistent, right? So which property of opposite side of the same coin is applicable here? What the applicable property here is that if one exists, the other has to exist. There's no other way about it. Okay, and that's the view of some experts. Now tell me, does the author agree with these experts? Do we know if the author agrees with these experts? We don't know. The author may agree, the author may not agree, the author has not come out and told us that. Okay, so we have no idea. Author is simply presenting it. He's simply in a reporting mode. He's just telling us this information. He's just giving us that information. Okay, he's not really saying whether he agrees with the author, with this set of experts. Now, tell me, what do you think based on your understanding of how, or let's say if you were the author, if you wanted to express the author's opinion for this particular sentence, how would you have written it? Okay. What I'm asking you is, let's say you are the author and you want to communicate that you also believe in these experts. How would you have expressed your sentence? Write down the sentence. Would have removed some. Okay, that's smart. You're actually making this as a fact then. If you remove some, then you are making it a fact. Some anthropologists rightly considered, absolutely right. Rightly is that spot on word. Okay. A very straightforward, single word. If you put in that word rightly there, you have now also expressed your own opinion. I believe that there are two faces of same coin. Yes, you're right. But then now you're changing the sentence structure also, right? So good. Some sociocultural anthropologists, including myself, consider okay. RC passages are not typically written in first person, but yes, but your effort is absolutely spot on. Good. So rightly, so if you have words such as rightly, some sociocultural anthropologists even rightly considered xenophobia and NEC opposite sides of the same coin. That would have given the author's opinion, or maybe towards the end, if the author had written and rightly so, that also would have been correct. So good. Uh, All right. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. Now, what is this part telling us? That there are some people who are saying that no, they need not coexist. Okay. They may be intimately connected, but they need not coexist. Okay. Now, again, we don't know if the few voices, if the author agrees with few voices, or if the author, we don't know that, right? Okay. All right. So now tell me, now that we've gone through this passage in a step-by-step manner, do you feel you have a better, how many of you have a better understanding of the passage in terms of who's saying what and all that? Good. Now tell me, is there something out of the ordinary that we are doing? Is there something that we are doing here or that I am doing with you here that you can't do on your own? Not at all. It's something which is very, very doable. I'm taking more time to comprehend. Very, very well said. I am doing that. I'm actually looking at each and every word. If you think about it, I'm focusing on words such as some. I'm focusing on words such as even, scrutinizing every word. Yes. But at the same time, if you think about it, when I read this part here, a complex system comes a sentiment structure, blah, 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 I went through this real fast, right? Because I knew what the intent of this part is. The intent of this part of the segment is to present a definition. So as long as I'm understanding the definition, I'm okay. Okay. But when I'm reading sentence words such as some, even, these are my keywords. Okay. And I want to understand or are deemed. So I don't want to be losing focus of these words. Now imagine, okay, imagine if you were simply skimming this, imagine if you were simply skimming through the passage, okay, would you be able to do all of this? Tell me. If you were simply skimming through the passage, would you be able to do any of this? Would you have noticed the word some? Would you have noticed the word even or but? No, you wouldn't have. And that is why those strategies do not work. Okay. If you have to score that score above V40, means that you need to be able to solve difficult questions accurately, which means that you need to have these solid strategies in place. Those skimming strategies can work for easy passages because truly they are easy questions. Okay, but they are not going to work, and I can put my stamp on it, they are not going to work for these difficult passages because there are these interlinkages that you have to understand in the passage. Okay, by definition, these are hard passages, so they need to have those interlinkages which cannot be simply skimmed through, which cannot be understood by simply skimming through. Okay. All right, so now let's answer the questions that was asked here. What can be inferred? Now, I'm going to show you a slide. I want you to, and all of that is covered in our course. But I want you to maybe take a screenshot of this slide. I'll be sharing the presentation as well with you, so you'll have the slide there as well. What is the correct inference? The correct inference is always from the point of view of the author. When you say what can be inferred, when you see what can be inferred in the question, you can translate that question to what does the author believe in. Okay, that's a very, very straightforward translation, and you cannot go wrong there. What can be inferred from the passage is same as what does the author believe in. Okay, and so if you are, and again, this really helps because if you're thinking it from the standpoint of the author, you know what the author has given his opinion about and what the author has not given his opinion about. Okay, so the answer choices in which the author has not given his opinion about cannot be the correct inference. Okay, now the author agrees with the facts. Okay, why? Because he's a logical person. So if the author is simply presenting a fact, he need not say and rightly so, because that's a fact, right? And he believes in the fact. Okay, so a fact from the passage can be considered as a correct inference choice, or anything in the passage on which the author has given his opinion can be his or her opinion can be considered as a correct inference choice. Okay, that's the only thing you have to understand about inference questions. Now, on that note, let's now look at the answer choices. And again, you see, if you have understood who is giving what viewpoint, right, when you're understanding the passage, now when you come to the answer choices, it's just a matter of fact to reject answer choices and select the correct one. You are no longer in that analysis mode because you've done that analysis upfront. And that is why Nishant was able to correctly answer a question within 30 seconds, because he had that level of comprehension, that level of understanding of the passage, just when he spent that amount of time in reading and understanding the passage. Now, xenophobia and EC, XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. The author does not give his opinion on that. Okay. XP entails dislike towards the strange. This is a reword of the definition that is presented of XP, and that is the correct answer. XP and EC are not connected with each other. Again, that's just a view of some experts. The author doesn't agree or disagree. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia. No, you cannot. You don't know if the author believes in that or not, because according to the author, according to the passage, this is a deemed view and the author has not given his opinion. In some cases, XP could be the cause of ethnocentrism. There is no causal relationship presented in the passage at all. Okay, so this choice is wrong. So now tell me, were the choices really close? Were they indeed close? No. So whenever your choices appear to be, whenever the choices in a question appear to be close, again, the operating word here is appear to you, then that's an indication that you haven't understood the passage to the right level of degree, to the required level of degree. Okay? Answer choice E seems strange. Yeah, it seems strange. There's no mention of causing here. Option D was a bit confusing, but after checking the rules of inference, it's clear. Absolutely right. And again, you have to understand what an inference is. Typically, what I think people consider as inferences, inference should be something that's not stated in the passage. That's a very loose definition. Okay. Now, yes, there is no answer choice that would be a direct reword of what's there in the passage. That's not going to happen. Right. Again, inference is always from the point of view of the author. That's something that you have to understand. Okay. All right. Again, I'm going to say this. Trust the process and trust yourself. Cultivating new habits and mastering new methods do not happen in a single go. Okay. It takes some time. You can improve your RC ability in 10 to 20 hours. Okay. RC is the easiest section to master. Believe me or not, believe it seriously. In SC, you have a number of rules. Again, not huge number of rules, but yes, you do have to focus on the grammatical rules. Okay. In CR, there is this whole thing about how to answer a certain. In CR also, if as soon as you master pre-thinking, you have it in control. In RC, as soon as you master these strategies, you have everything in control. There isn't much to memorize here. It's really the skill of reading that you have to build. Okay. So you can improve your RC ability in 10 to 20 hours, but you need to trust the process. You need to apply the reading strategies consistently, not just while reading RC, but while reading anything, whether it's emails, whether it's newspaper articles or articles from magazines such as Economist or New York Times, etc. One more thing that you need to focus on is learning from mistakes. Okay, when you make a mistake, make sure you understand why did you make that mistake. Okay, make a note of that. All the clues that I've mentioned to you today with regards to when the answer choices appear close, right? Those things you have to keep in mind. Those need to be your clues to understand when your comprehension of the passage was on spot or when it wasn't. Okay. Now, timing and GMAT RC. Again, I'm going to skip through this section. You can go through it on your own later on. But frankly, the main thing over here is I'm going to come to this part. If you read the passage quickly, how much time do you guys spend today to read a passage? Okay, when I said today, what I meant was before this session. 2 minutes. 2 minutes depends on the size of the passage. Less than 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and that's wrong. Okay, good. All right. So typically, people give about 2 to 3 minutes for a passage. Okay. what happens is, because again they want to rush through the passage, so because they have to solve these 3 to 4 questions, so they think they should be spending more time on the question. Okay, so they go to question one, they read choice A, they go back to the passage. They read choice B, they go back to the passage. They read choice C, they go back to the passage. Okay, ultimately they end up spending at least 2 minutes on question number one. How many of you have seen that happen? That you see, how many of you have experienced that you are, when you're reading the question and the choices, you are going back to the passage to refer to the passage to understand which choice is correct. What you're doing really is, what you're ending up doing is, you are getting to understand the passage while you're answering the question, and that is the absolutely wrong strategy to use. Because think about logically what it is that you're doing. You have a passage which has a set of information, all correct information, right? That's the information which you have to understand. Then you have these answer choices in which 4 answer choices are wrong and 1 is correct. So without understanding all the correct information which is there in the passage, you are now trying to understand that information in the light of the incorrect choices as well. Aren't you making it harder for yourself? Yes or no? Isn't that a counterintuitive approach if you think about it that way? And that is why the right thing to do over here, and what ends up happening is your confidence is really brought down. Why? Because you are constantly struggling with those answer choices. And you actually start to feel that, oh my goodness, what's happening here? I'm not getting it. That nervousness kicks in. Okay, that sense of I'm not getting it really brings you down. Okay, versus if you now you actually spend about 6.5 to 8 minutes in this way as well, but the result is poor accuracy, the result is low confidence, and that's the worst thing that you can do for yourself in a timed test like GMAT. Okay, versus how should you be solving an RC? You read the passage, you give it your time, 2.5 minutes to 4 minutes, you give it all the time that you need in order to answer this passage properly. You go through question one, you read choice A, you read choice B, you reject the incorrect choices, okay? And you don't really need to go back to the passage to answer the question, okay? You solve question one in 1 minute at the most. Because you've already understood the passage, you don't really need to go back to the answer to the passage while you are going through the answer choices, okay? Ultimately, you can answer a passage in less than 6 minutes. So really, it is not, you're not creating time. No one can. You are simply redistributing time. You're not taking longer on a passage by passage basis. You are simply redistributing time. Okay, so if we practice these skills, can we completely avoid going back to the passage? You can. You may need to go back to the passage only for detail type questions. Okay, and again, all those strategies we have discussed in the detail question type concept files. On an average, after practicing, how many passages should we be able to apply these concepts with ease? I would say the number varies anywhere from 10 to 20. It depends on what your starting ability is. But and it depends on how diligently you are applying the strategies. But I would say you go through 10 to 20 passages using the right kind of strategies, which means that you need to go through the application files that we have in our course. You need to follow along properly. 11th passage or 21st passage, you should be able to do this really very well. Okay. And again, I'm going to repeat myself. GMAT RC is the easiest section to master. Okay, all you have to do is read slowly and focus on comprehension. Okay. Now, this is a comeback story of a student who was unable to do well because of RC and eventually was able to ace the GMAT because she mastered GMAT RC. In her first attempt, she bombed her RC. I would come across an RC in the middle of my mocks. I would feel low and lose time and thereby end up rushing through my SC and CR questions as well. So she messed up her CR and SC because of RC. Then she changed her attitude towards GMAT RC. She decided to get immersed in the passage. As she got immersed, she found comprehending easy. That's what I said, right? As soon as you get your attitude right, which is get yourself immersed in the passage, you will see that all the reading strategies start to work really beautifully. But that attitude piece is something that you have to make sure that you bring in. She was able to take good notes and get more and more questions correct. This strategy, while time consuming in the learning phase, helped her improve her verbal score to V41, which is 94 percentile on GMAT verbal. So I'm not saying that during the practice phase it's going to be easy. No, it is going to take time in the practice phase. That is the key thing, in the practice phase. In fact, this is exactly what Arjun did as well. He took GMAT 3 times and he just could not improve his verbal score. He did everything that he could. RC was his main point, and in his final attempt, he applied the reading strategies. He didn't do anything differently from what we've been talking about in this webinar. He applied reading strategies and he focused on comprehension. He stayed calm, he focused on learning. And really, this is not me as an instructor telling you. This is the student who has toiled through the process. So definitely look through these video debriefs. You are going to find them very, very motivating. You will be able to learn what not to do and what to do. Okay. So he went from 40 percentile in verbal to 41, which is 91 percentile in his fourth attempt. Okay, so this is the magic that's possible, but there are no tricks. What you need to do is work diligently and toil through it. And again, we are there to help you out, and that's the reason why we've created this architecture of course, so that you can learn all of this in the right manner. So there are three things that are really essential. Okay, first of all, you need to improve comprehension. Secondly, you need to learn the question types. Yes, you understand what the passage says, but how does that translate into you answering questions? Okay, so you need to learn how to address these question types. The third thing is you need to practice in the right manner. Okay, so how do you improve comprehension? As I said earlier, you need to first go through the master comprehension course. What this course does is it simply tells you how long sentences are constructed, so that you can deconstruct those long sentences as you are understanding the sentence structure. It tells you those pause points. Remember, I was pausing at certain points. Now, there is a definite method to that. I won't call it a method to madness, but yes, there's a definite method to where to pause. And those are the things that we teach you in Master Comprehension course. So that's a very, very essential course. Then after doing that, you go through reading strategies, concept files, which are there in the foundation part of your reading comprehension course. The reading strategies that I introduced to you here are discussed in detail in these concept files. So go through those, then go through the practice files. It's really very, very important. These three practice files are, they basically inculcate these reading strategies in your mind. Okay, the way I was going through the passages today, emphasizing on words such as some, even, and making you think, okay, what is this? What is the author saying here? Does the author believe? Why did the author use the word even, right? So those are the kinds of interactions that you see in these practice files, because that's what actually drives your change or basically gets you in that mode of analyzing the passage. Gives you those things to actually think about when you're reading the passage. Okay. And then there are 8 passages with the rigorous application of reading strategies. You go through those. Okay. Now, after you've gone through or after you've learned how to read the passage, you then go through these specialized concepts in which we teach you the characteristics of different kinds of questions. So for main point question, the first question that we did in this session, we have 2 concept files. So we teach you what all to think about when you are answering a main point question. Then you have main point practice 1 and practice 2. You apply those learnings on practice files. Same thing with inference concepts. You have not 1, not 2, but 3 concept files just teaching you how to answer inference questions. The same thing holds true for detail. The same thing holds true for structure. So think about it. I mean, you get so much of theoretical knowledge in a practical manner, obviously in these concept files, and then you apply those concepts really very consistently in these practice files. Okay, so by the time you reach the end of the course, you all you need now is dedicated practice, and for that you have application files, because in these application files you basically put together all the things that you've learned, and you answer multiple kinds of questions after having understood the passage in the right manner. And then in Scholaranium, you have 10 ability quizzes, and so in all you have about 45 RC passages, and which translate to about 250 questions, and that's more than enough of RC content that you would ever need. So with uniform coverage across humanities, sciences, economics, and business. And here's another recent example of a student who made comprehension a habit. Anastasia is another person who took GMAT 3 times. She even took a private tutor second time in Moscow. She took master comprehension course to heart, and successful students do that. They build their foundation skills. Okay, they understand how to read to understand the meaning. She also made sure, as Arjun did, to read the passage only once. And that's the power of reading the passage really, really well. Time to answer questions comes down because you are so clear about what the passage says. You no longer need to go back to refer to the passage to understand what the passage was saying. And one thing that I'm going to say next is, and I want you to write that down, on the GMAT, speed kills. Okay, do not speed, because if you speed, you are not going to learn. You're not going to understand what the author is saying. So do not do that at all. All right, so with this, we've come to the end of this part of the webinar, and I would like to understand from you, what have you understood from this session? I've been doing a lot of talking here, and I want to now hear from you. What is that one takeaway that you have? And I would appreciate if you could put in your rating over here as well for how you like the session. And any feedback would also be appreciated. Let me get the feedback poll as well. My throat seems a lot better than last week. Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending these sessions. Upfront investment of time helps. Got confidence that by learning skill, the confidence boosts. Good, very nice. How I can improve from 60 to 80%. Again, don't think about accuracy. Think about ability. Don't rush. Could you please answer my question? Could you please put your question in the Q&A board here? All right, good. So I'm going to invite Rajat back into the session so that he can take any other questions that you may have. Trust on the steps guided by you. I just need to learn how to be patient. It's excruciatingly difficult for me to be patient because of my nature. Okay, well, that's a skill that you need to build, and that's okay. I mean, you have to you know the skill that you need to build, right? So you know that that's what you need to do. So you'll be able to do that now. See, part of the problem is the biggest thing with this thing is that you need to understand what is it that you're lacking in, and as soon as you do that, you know that you will be able to improve upon it. All right, so with this, I'm going to give the mic to Rajat, and he's going to answer any other questions that you may have. I wish you all the very best, and do let us know how we can help you in your GMAT preparation and beyond. Thank you.
All right, guys, we are now in the last part of the webinar. Let me actually share the session PDF. and as well as the batch batch calendars. So we have the batch calendars for the upcoming batch, and here is the session PDF. You can download both of them. Okay. Can there be two authors in the passage? And Kshitij says that for the long examples we skim through not the okay. So there's always one author in the passage because again remember one person's writing. Now the author may present a critic over there, and then so you may have two people in the passage, but you'd always see one author um, in the passage. Okay. Then Subhodip says, "Does in the GMAT is the passage also computer adaptive?" So on the GMAT, what really happens is that essentially the the testing authority GMAT creates a number of questions per passage. So and depending on how you're performing in the test for the same passage, a student A who's let's say at 40 percentile level may get easier questions. A student B who's performing at 70 percentile level may get more challenging questions. And this is the reason why in the official guide, when you see a passage, you see 7 or 8 questions against a passage, whereas on the actual GMAT, you only get 3 or 4 at the most. How do you find whether the author is stating a fact or an opinion? That's a great question. So fact versus opinion depends on how the author is stating. Um, an example of that would be, when the author says, it is clear that the sun revolves around the moon, however ridiculous that may be, because of the way the author has really said that, it is a fact. Just say this, say statement 1. And again, this is where a lot of what you do in critical reasoning really helps. And say if the author says the disclosure center revolves around the moon, hence so it's very clear that the first statement that the author is really telling you is that the part that I'm going to put in blue is going to be a fact, however ridiculous you may call it. Okay, now let's take another statement. So in this case, the sun revolves around the moon is the author's opinion. Why? Because the author is justifying his opinion. So again, that's kind of how you basically distinguish between a fact and an opinion. It's not just in NCR, but not just in RC, but also in CR. So Abhishek, does that help? And again, if you look at the bold-faced questions, they are also a part of the free trial. You'd really see how to distinguish between fact versus opinion. Okay, Apoorv says the GMAT planner does not tell about the subsection. I mean, I think it does. And he says, based on the plan, how do we know how much time per section was assigned? What if it takes longer than the estimated time? So Apoorv, the GMAT planner gives you really good time estimates based on what you tell the planner what your starting abilities are and based on what your ending abilities are. And then based on that, if any of those numbers are incorrect, then in the end, bad input leads to bad output. Having said that, it's accurate in many cases, and actually upwards of 80% of the cases. But remember this, it assumes that you, when you're studying and you're putting in the time, you're doing full concentration. It assumes that you're putting in the time consistently. That's where the output of the planner, you also see the day by day plan. If, on the other hand, you have 10 tabs open in your browser, if you study sentence correction for 2 days and then really not study it for 3 other days, of course, it'll take longer in hours because you'll have more revision cycles and so on and so forth. So, so again, that's something which is there. But the beauty of this entire system is, let's say you take 10 to 15% longer. Does that matter as long as you hit that ability score? Um, the time estimates provided by the planner, I mean, they give you a great guideline as to when you can schedule your GMAT. When we launched the planner, in actually we launched it on 27th of February, and it's what, a couple of months since then. We've had about 5,000 plans created over there. When we spoke with our students to really say what is one of the biggest value factors, in addition to the milestones that you got from the planner, what they really said is, I now have a reliable estimate of when I can realistically take the GMAT. Prior to that, I was being overly optimistic, and then just getting that guideline is huge, because one of the worst things that can happen is to really say, hey, I'm going to take the GMAT in a month, and you realize, no, I need 2 months, and then you've scheduled the GMAT, you're putting undue pressure on it, and it leads to a lot of wasted effort. So Kshitish has another question. He says, for long passages, is it okay to skim the passage and through the long example and write the summary in words? So skimming versus reading is in an RC passage is something which is a skill that you learn as you practice more. So don't practice skimming versus reading right off when you're learning GMAT RC. Again, as Payal said, when you're learning GMAT RC, read everything properly. Don't worry about timing. And so for the first 10 to 12 passages, do not skim. Write things down. Get your mind trained to read properly. But what's going to happen as you read more and more passages is, what you're going to realize is that there are certain portions where authors giving examples, where authors not making a decision, where authors stating a bunch of facts, that you can actually not worry about remembering them. You just need to remember that here is the data point out there, and then you can come back to it. Why and why can you do that? Because there's no decision making, there's no change of opinion, there's no opinion of two sides that's there in that part of the passage, and there you can skim, but again, not in the beginning. But as you get more and more mature, as you get into the habit of comprehending and applying these strategies, once you know you can apply those strategies, then you can really say, hey, which portions of the RC are more valuable? What do you think is the author is the test likely to test? And you automatically get that sense. That's something that you develop automatically. So don't create a skimming strategy. Let that happen naturally to you. Abhishek says, is it possible that the author put a fact which might be wrong? He says, like the example, the sun goes around the moon example, but the choices given are correct. So first of all, if the author says it's a fact, it's a fact. If on a GMAT RC, if the sun goes around the moon, throw your science knowledge out of the box and assume that the sun does go around the moon. So a fact will not be wrong overall. Now, a fact may not be the correct answer choice if the question statement itself says, according to, let's say hypothetically in the passage, there's a critic. What does the critic believe? But if there's nothing there, then it's by definition, what does the author believe? So Abhishek, hopefully that helps. This another question. It says, I've gone through the files, but in 3 minutes it becomes hard to take along the strategies and implement. Yes, don't take 3 minutes. I mean, take longer is what I would say. Again, remember this, and this is something which is very interesting about GMAT reading comprehension. So I speak with a lot of students who get high percentiles, and as you go on GMAT Club, and if you search the tag e-GMAT, you can read those debriefs as well. And what I've found with GMAT RC is different people follow slightly different strategies. Everyone follows the same core strategy of going through the passage in a strategic manner, and making sure that you follow the keywords, you understand the change in opinions that go throughout the passage. But some people, what they really say is, I'm going to read the passage so well that I won't have to come back to the passage at all. In fact, I had a few students who practiced this way. They said, even though the passage is available to me, I will challenge myself, and they would do that using during practice in Scholarium, where they would not look at the passage again, and that's how they practiced. And to do that, of course, you take longer to read the passage, and they would spend 3.5, 4 minutes reading the passage. And but because they read the passage so well, their average time to answer was about 30 seconds. Okay. On the other hand, there are certain other people who followed the skimming strategy, did not take as many notes, yet understood the passage, and saved about 45 seconds or so in the reading portion of the passage, but had to come back a couple of times during the 4 questions to the passage. And again, their average time per question was slightly higher. Uh, is one strategy right versus the other? No, it doesn't. It worked for each one of these individuals. Both, in both groups have seen scores of 740, 750, 760. I think the key thing which you have to really do is you have to first get to the point where you can say that for medium passages, I can get 85, 90% accuracy regardless of the time. And for hard passages, I can get to a 70 plus percent accuracy overall. If you get to that, that's when you can start to optimize. And again, you'd find optimization becomes easier. Why? Because you'll have that confidence. Suman says, just wanted to know if an investment banking job, pre-MBA job, is good. Um, depends on what you want to do post your MBA, I think, Sumar, and depends on where you want to go. So let's say you wanted to go to Columbia. Now, pre-MBA and investment banking job, for Columbia would be a comfort factor in many ways, that because a good number of people in their incoming class are from that field. So they know the area. You'd be a typical candidate applying to Columbia, so they won't have concerns about it, about okay, where you're coming from. Having said that, how you fared as an investment banker, what achievements you have would matter quite a bit. Um, so I think at other schools it may not make any difference, but in the end, and that's kind of where, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'd be able to see students at pretty much every B school. And what you'd realize is, folks who get into Harvard, folks who get into Stanford, and I was actually doing that analysis the other day. A good number of them have had very consistent careers. I won't call them super extraordinary careers, but they've had consistency with regards to, they've done well in their jobs. They've actually had significant achievements, not what I call as company transforming experiences, but essentially experiences where they've made a significant difference in bringing about efficiencies in processes, or helping the company, helping a department add another arm of revenue, or so on and so forth. So things that I would say a top 15, top 20 percentile employee should do. And if you have those consistent performances, and going back, they have the good scores, not just in the on the GMAT, but also in their schools, and so on and so forth. If you have that kind of a profile, getting into Stanford or Harvard, or GSB Chicago, or Sloan or Booth is actually not that difficult. Okay, I don't see any other question overall.
Utkarsh says, I recently signed for GLP Plus. Just wanted to see if you have to register for the batch. No, you don't. But one thing that you'd get reminders. But one thing that I'd say is we do run multiple batches, so make sure you actually track your batch very closely because that way you'd really prepare for your session itself. Um, the means to differentiating yourself is achievements. That's what I would say. It's not about where you worked. I mean, it's about what you achieved. All right, guys, thank you very much. It was a pleasure conducting this webinar. It was really, really good to see the quality of questions, the quality of participation overall. If you've not gone through the free concepts, then make sure you go through them. Also, let me actually present uh, uh, the the upcoming webinars overall so that you can register for the same. But make sure just to so that you benefit most from this webinar, just make sure that you go through the free concepts. Also, those who were worried about fact versus claim, go through the boldface files. They are also a part of the free trial. And here are the upcoming pre-sessions. Remember, we have the quant workshop tomorrow, and then the free critical reasoning webinar next week. With that, I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar and spending that time with me. Now go, study well, and get your dream GMAT score and get into the B school of your choice.